Hi, today we're going to talk about my job, or at least what I partially do for a living. We're going to talk about a profession, the profession of a jurilinguist. It is a profession that is anchored, solidly anchored into different fields, the field of the law and the field of linguistics, principally in the field of linguistics, as I'm mainly a linguist. And I also studied law. So what is a jurilinguist? What does a jurilinguist do for a living? Well, firstly, as jurilinguists, we work with the most exciting elements ever created, invented on Earth, and that is words. And it gets even better as we work with a specific category of words, which are legal terms. They are used by legal professionals in the field of justice and in the field of the law. Most of the words that are used by the legal professionals are called legal terms, not that there are any illegal words or illegal terms, but because they deal with lex legis, which is the Latin for law, and so they're etymologically related to the law. Why do we call them terms? Well, we call them terms because they belong to a certain specific field of activity, which is clearly separated from other fields of activity. And this brings us to the other meaning of the word term, which is boundary, frontier, limit, end of something. Secondly, we do another very exciting thing besides working with words from the field of justice and the law and unveiling their meanings and their uses. And this other exciting thing is that we may assist legal professionals in their work. So we may work with lawyers, with solicitors and prosecutors and judges and any type of jurists, notaries, law professors, and who need specific information, jurilinguistic information about legal terms and phrases, their uses, and their translation. And that means that we, as linguists specialized in a specific area of language, which is legal language, work with jurists who are specialized in specific areas of the law. And we ask them for guidance and we provide them with the necessary jurilinguistic support for their legal drafting, legal research, legal analysis. This is teamwork and this is really great. And why is it so extraordinary is because we learn a lot from the legal experts we work with, and because our work is truly meaningful and useful for professionals that do not belong to our own field of activity, which is the field of linguistics in general and language. And now, to be even more specific about a jurilinguist's workday, what is it that we do? What do we exactly do on a day-to-day basis? Well, we may, for instance, work in several different languages and exploring the jurilinguistic destiny of a term. Take, for example, whistleblower, which is a term that was born in the USA, originally belonging to the field of sports as a referee who blows the whistle to, I don't know, signify the end of a game, for example. This term also belonged to the world of the mob, so to the underworld, when thieves would designate one of theirs who should be on the lookout for the police and warn the rest of the group if the police survived, and warn them by whistling. The term whistleblower became a sociological term in the 1970s and the legal term in the 1980s. still in the United States of America, when it started to mean an employee working for a private organization and who became aware of and exposed secretive activity within that organization, and which was deemed illegal, unethical, dangerous for the rest of the society. In the years 2000, the whistleblower started to have another meaning, that is public officer. This term is difficult to translate because of some extra linguistic features that have to do with the history of the language culture we're translating it into, and the mentality of the society that wishes to borrow it. In France, the parliament finally settled for lanceur d'alerte in 2016. And this after the press and the French society at large had been toying with terms equivalents like délateur, dénonciateur, informateur for years, and which reminded the French public of the collaboration with the Nazis. In Canada, the term dénonciateur may be used today, as they do not have the same perception of the Second World War as we do in Europe, and more specifically in France. In Italy, things get even more interesting because the American term is borrowed completely. It is used with an Italian definite article, for example, il whistleblower. It hasn't been translated officially yet, as the cultural weight of hundreds of years of omerta can still be felt. In Eastern Europe, in Romania, there is no official legal translation of this term either, as per the country's past, not yet and not completely cleansed of the trauma caused by decades of secret police and dictatorship. Instead, the phrase avertisor de integritate was suggested, which can be translated as a warning device for or of integrity, which is really awkward, and which introduces the term avertisor, a warning device, as devoid of any human characteristics whatsoever. So when legal professionals from different legal language cultures sit down together and discuss, for instance, the concept of a notion and the legal term whistleblower, this type of jurilinguistic analysis can help them overcome misunderstandings, as the definitions and cultural backgrounds, cultural contexts can be very different, as we've just seen, from one legal system to another. We can see that jurilinguists may work with different legal languages and do contrastive analysis of legal concepts that exist simultaneously in several legal systems. We can also do something different. We can also work diachronically within only one language and culture. And for instance, we can analyze the evolution of a legal term such as abandonment or divorce or marriage in French. Until the beginning of the 20th century, abandoning one's children to a public institution as a charity, for example, was not considered as a reprehensible act. On the contrary, as parents were poor, that was most of the times the only way to ensure their children's survival. Divorce had been considered unethical and was even prohibited for a very long time. Same goes with homosexuality. The concept of marriage has evolved in the recent years from the definition of a union between a man and a woman to that of two persons of the same sex. And so not all legal systems have witnessed the same evolutions. And the jurilinguist, which is a profession that involves more than two languages most of the times, more than two languages. So a jurilinguist may work in several languages and help shed some light on these matters. that are cross-cultural. Jurilinguists can also analyze legal drafts and give their opinion about the wording and the phrasing of these drafts. Like, for instance, in a recent French law about the new coronavirus, one can read the following rather awkward phrasing: médicaments appropriés à l'éradication de la catastrophe sanitaire, which can be translated as medicine or drugs that are appropriate for the eradication of the sanitary catastrophe. There are several remarks that the jurilinguist can make. Firstly, medicine or drugs are appropriate for patients, and not for abstract concepts such as eradication. Then one cannot simply eradicate a catastrophe, as linguistically a catastrophe is an accident, an event that occurs suddenly and cannot be eradicated. Lastly, why use the adjective appropriate in relation with medicine or drugs, when again the drugs or the medicine mentioned in the law is supposed to be implicitly good for those who need it, for the patients. So a jurilinguist is there to help and support the jurists, and also to warn their legal expert colleagues of any linguistic incongruency that may occur while drafting a legal text. Last but not least, a jurilinguist may be a faculty member, a researcher. You may also do legal translation, work for both public and private organizations, national and international. For instance, I'm not only a jurilinguist, but I'm also, or mainly, a lecturer and researcher in legal English at University Lumière, Lyon 2 in France. I worked as a legal translator for the European Commission, for the Tribunal de Grande Instance de Lyon, for the International Relations Department of the Paris Bar Association. I also provided legal advice for the Institute of Human Rights in Lyon, for the Center for International Legal Cooperation at The Hague. I worked with several private law practices and NGOs. So this gives a quite a wide variety of bodies and professionals that you can work with. Being a jurilinguist is an absolutely amazing job. And I really enjoy doing research in jurilinguistics, more specifically in contrastive jurilinguistics, working in several languages. It is intellectually rewarding, it is intellectually challenging. It prompts you to learn and to improve yourself constantly. You work in close contact with legal experts, you learn a lot from them, and then you have the satisfaction of being of service. Of being useful to the legal community and to the greater community in general. The more languages you can work with, of course, the more you can discover about the law and its words, such as, for example, that the term justice does not only come from the Latin justitia, but is also closely connected and originates from a Proto-Indo-European root that is similar to roots in all the Semitic languages, and which have a common meaning, the meaning of life or vital force. In Hebrew and Arabic, we say hay, al-haya, haya. Or, for instance, the fact that the term besoin in French is rooted in soin, translated as improperly translated as care, as the concept of care is much wider than the concept of soin in French. We also learned that in German, besinnen means to think, to consider, to contemplate, whereas in Italian we have cura, which belongs to 3 different fields at the same time: medicine, law, and spirituality. In Spanish, there is cuidar, cuidado, coming from the Latin coagitare, meaning to move together in the same direction, to advance together. And this is all awesome, right?